I was gay, but because I was just different, I was fat, I was short, I was smart according to everybody else. Um, I was excluded from a lot of activities from both like girls and boys. I was too much of a boy to line with the girls, and I was too much of a girl to line with the boys. So a lot of the times I was just lying in the library with the two friends I had, the librarian or like a teacher or like the cafe lady or something. So I've never had friends. And of course, there was the physical aspects of it. That started probably around Form 1. The kicking, the pushing, the shoving, I got thrown to drains, all kind of things. And I feel like that year I've had a very sordid past. I'm so much more
Because
of a
of your
confident
sexuality,
person.
you were, that's why they did
No,
that, or
I really think it was because I was just different. Because I don't think I presented as like Siobhan as sexual until well into my adulthood. but I just think people saw me as like a nerd, as um not even so much of a person, it's just like a being, I guess. Um, the physical was really and truly just those small things. I guess the biggest thing I went through was somebody shoved a pad in my face, like that was stained with ketchup to make it look like blood. And I mean, I could laugh about it now, but it was so traumatic when I was younger. But it really goes to inform that people think of bullying as this black and white concept in that you have to get kicked, you have to get pushed, you have to get all of these harmful things that can be seen, but it really takes a toll on you emotionally and mentally because imagine being 12 or 13, 15 even, and being excluded from a lot of things. Like I wanted friends, but I never had the friends and I was never able to get those friends because, again, exclusion. I mean, it goes back to everything. I've been called queen, I've been called he, she, I've been called Eileen. And I mean, I could laugh about these things now because I've worked through most of that trauma. But um, yeah, it really goes back to the understandings of the different types of bullying because again, it's not as black and white as people make it out to be these days. So that clap was aggressive, sorry.
thanks for sharing that. Bobby, you want to share anything? Okay, I don't know if he's there or not. Okay, Rudy, who has never been bullied in his life, can you share something? Your first experience? Oh God. All right. We don't have time for this. Let's move
This is gonna be
You
long.
have an example of bullying.
on. Please.
Um, in primary school, I honestly don't remember us in primary school saying any mean things to each other than you might say something like, "Oh, you're so ugly," or "I don't like you." In my primary school, I don't remember the children saying many negative things to each other. I do remember, interestingly enough, now that I look back on it, some of the children, one or two or three or four, they were acting out things that now I believe, looking back, I believe that they may have been molested at home because some of those things that they were talking about or doing, you could only learn it from an adult. But in terms of bullying, in QRC, Liam and I were talking about it today actually. I always say the first 3 years of QRC were the most hellish years of my entire life because QRC is a school where you get people from all different backgrounds and ethnicities, and it's one of the prestige schools that is not as homogenous as others are. And what it did is it took everybody who was living a sheltered life and put them in the same classroom as people who had very difficult lives. Like, I remember one of my good friends, Trent, used to have to leave Manzanilla at 4 o'clock in the morning and take an unair conditioned blue bus to get to Port de Spain every day and back. And he never did well in school because he couldn't study properly. But that's another story by itself. And I'm saying all of this to say that you really saw firsthand a microcosm of all that is wrong with society. Because these children were a little older. We were, what, 11, 12, 13. And we were at that point in life where you could actually pick things up from adults and you knew what you were doing when you were using it on people. So I remember it would have been the first semester that I was at QRC. Some of the boys, I remember some of them quite vividly, but I wouldn't want to say that one of them was the first, but they were definitely some of the first. Two, they were the first people that called me faggot. They were the first people to call me other types of names like that. And the difference with me is that even though it was very disorienting and it was hurtful, I came from I had a support system that allowed me to fight back. So yes, you would hurt me, but then I would do better than you in the exams, or I had 5 uniforms, one for each day of the school week, and you had to reuse yours because you just didn't have what I had. And those were the shields and the mechanisms that I had to use to, I guess, get back at other people. You know, it became, though, a sort of a rite of passage, because while they would tease me about being gay, which I mean, I knew the concept of being gay, but I didn't know it in a pejorative sense from my family. That is something I learned from the other kids in school. They obviously learned it from their family in that way. We would tease each other. So we would tease people about the length of their pants, or like Trent saying you have to take bus every day to come to school. So everybody in QRC got their fair share of some kind of what could be considered bullying, but nobody, to my mind, myself included, was ever excluded from anything. So even though people didn't like you or they thought things about you, they didn't have the power in our school to not allow you to either be a member of the club or place in sports or answer questions in class. The bullying did not become exclusionary because we all had friends, more or less. So again, it was not the nicest situation. I mean, children shouldn't have to learn the world in that way. But I think the one thing that stands out to me, I shared this last year at the Rotary Club. They invited me to talk about being gay, and they asked a similar question, and I shared this with them, which I've never shared. I don't know if I've ever shared this with any of you all. But after, when I had already excelled at school, like I thought I had moved past, you'd get a comment here and there, but I thought in my mind I had arrived, you know, I had done well at CXC and I was deputy head prefect and president of different clubs and whatever, whatever. I was walking into the science block one day to go to a class, and I just felt this thing fall on my face. And it took me, I don't know how to describe it to you, but it took me maybe a good 2 minutes to realize that somebody had spat on me. And, you know, people see you where you are today in the world, and they have a lot of things to say about you. They talk about privilege, and they talk about, you know, you don't understand what it is to whatever. They think you don't understand. But I don't know if any of you all have ever been spat upon. It is a very humbling experience because in that moment, you realize that no matter what you have achieved in life, and that was a big lesson for me actually. It taught me that no matter what you've achieved in life, no matter where you are, where you feel you are, there are people out there who see you as less than, who see you as not even human, to the point where they are so moved that they would either spit on you or bottle you or hit you or whatever it is that people do to to others when they don't see them as human. Um, so yeah, it was. I mean, I left Kiosi with a lot of friends and good memories and stuff, but there inside of all of that, there are those memories as well. Um, I luckily I had a big mouth too, like some of you all, and a large vocabulary. So when people would tease me, I would tease them back in other ways. If I could change it, yeah, I would. I wouldn't put up my hand and say, "Oh, well, that that made me so strong and wonderful." Maybe it did, but it was nice. Um, l- I will just add one more thing. The school was very supportive. I've said that as well. That the principals that I had, the teachers, they were very, very supportive, and that made a big difference because they didn't tolerate that at all. They didn't tolerate um, people trying to take like students trying to take advantage of other students. Um, so that's my story with bullying. But I would tell you that bullying doesn't stop when you're young. Like I've seen people bully people in the workplace, and the same way Siobhan spoke about it, it's something that I don't tolerate at all. Like it really unnerves me when I see people being bullied, and but I've had to stay quiet sometimes when friends confide in me or colleagues or I see, because at the same time you don't know if to stand up for people. You don't know if they actually want you to defend them.
And sometimes you could actually make it worse by
Make it
standing up.
worse, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like you're not reveal what they're being bullied about by you standing up for them. It's like you're making it known to everybody that this is what everybody thinks of that person, and now their secret is
Yeah.
out in the open. So,
But Kennedy, is there a definition of bullying? Like like we use the word loosely, but is there a
mhm.
specific type of behavior that is bullying as opposed to offensive language, or is it, you know,
I'm sure there is. We just have to look it up. So, but there should be some academic definition of it. But I think we have all experienced it in some shape or form. It doesn't necessarily have, because I think what most people, and I could probably call out the Minister of Education, and his take on this is that and this and general society, I suppose, when we speak of bully and they think of physical, that's also all of those viral videos
oh,
that we see for school children, getting into physical fights. That's what they consider bullying. But what
or
they
like somebody actually physically molesting you, like taking something from you or something like that, that type of bullying?
No, I'm talking like literally fist fights, fighting, pulling, be physically beating up somebody. That's what our society considers bullying to be, because there's still a lot of people who still think that's a new age term, and what is that really, So what with that new quote unquote new age term, what we are trying to say is that, bullying always existed, but we weren't brave or we weren't ready enough to call it out. And what we are calling out now, it's the verbal attacks, it's the well, now we have cyberbullying, we have sexual grooming and sexual assault. That's part of bullying that young people face, what else again if I'm missing, but that is the experience. So like I can tell you, I mean, I'm listening to you guys. I when I joined Silver Lining and we were talking about this, I have never been physically assaulted or have gotten into a physical fight or have anybody lay their hands on me to
Yeah.
say that I have been bullied according to that definition. But what I did endure, and it's amazing that both Siobhan and Wade mentioned this, that it happened to them. So, and even you to some extent, really, it happened to you guys like in high school. I feel like that happened to me literally first year. I was always the gay kid without any of us knowing what gay meant. So I didn't really hear the words faggot or gay in primary school. Maybe when leaving like the last semester of standard 5, but what I did hear was girly boy. He's a girl, and misgendering me. I was always she. People would literally come up to me and call me that. I had teachers who would encourage it to some extent. I mean, some of them, I remember once one of my teachers tried to stop it, and it just made it worse because nowadays you put the spotlight on me. And I was like, oh God, no, I don't need that. When I got into high school, that's when it is I started hearing the names faggots and bullerman and all of these things. And the first, I would say Form 1, Form 2, I was like pretty tough about it. I was like, okay, whatever, I had a sharp tongue as well. So if somebody calls me that, I will cuss your ass up right back, right after. But I remember when we were all 13 and and we hit Form 3, that's where his hormones kicked in, right? So it just felt like that summer period, leaving Form 2 to Form 3, we were all friends, boys and girls. And then we entered Form 3, and suddenly everybody just started seeing each other differently. So because the hormones and this
You went
sexual,
to tech school.
what's that?
You went to mixed school?
A mixed school, yeah.
Okay.
And the bullying was so bad for me in primary school. I remember when we were
In
picking
primary school?
I'm telling you, primary school, verbal bullying, and simply based on, well, we didn't know what sexuality was back then, but they were just looking at the markers, what markers of masculinity applied to our society and culture back then. Any deviation from that would have been something to laugh at, poke fun at, humiliate, scorn, and that's what the boys and some of the girls, that's what they looked at. They was like, I wasn't the most manly of boys. I wasn't. I didn't like sports, PE. I much rather what the girls and I'm playing with the hula hoop and stuff. That's just what I used to like to do. So the boys now was always on my ass about that. When I had to pick for common entrance, the schools you want to go into, it was so bad for me that I did not want my parents to pick any same-sex schools. My first choice was St. Mary's. And I was like, oh God, no, I don't want to go to that. I don't want to go to that. Mom and dad had wanted to put Hillview and Holy Cross as the second and third. And I was like, no, I don't want to go to that school. So they put Northeastern, and then they put two other schools that my teacher would tell me, why are you even picking? One was Sangre the junior second, the other one was Arima secondary. And my teacher was like, what are you putting these schools for you? You don't make the kinds of grades to be that low to get into those schools. You should pick some top ranked schools. And we put Northeastern second because we felt like that is where I was grade wise, so I could get into it. And that to me was my first choice. And I wanted to get into a mixed school because I knew I could not survive a same-sex school. I think I might have been a George Cassandra, and if that had happened to me, like that is how bad and horrible it was for me. Like I didn't have that emotional support system for somebody to tell me there's more to life than this. It was thing. So when I got into Form 3 and everybody started seeing each other in a sexual way, it was the weirdest thing because that didn't happen for me. like I was so messed up and screwed up. I didn't have that, like seeing the girls a different way, obviously, and I wasn't seeing guys in a sexual way. So I was like, what is this you all are talking
Because they were
about?
all ugly.
No, and that's the weird thing about it. There was a lot of really good looking guys and girls in my class, and not to play into stereotypes, but socioeconomic status and educational background, it always seems to have a certain class and type of people. I from first year all the way up to Form 5, I was always in that so-called A class, and the A class was always made up of rich people, in the school. So I remember when all of them started looking at each other in a sexual way. That didn't happen to me, and I was even more confused. Like, what's going on with me? Something is even weird. People are calling me faggots, and I didn't even know what that means because back then I knew what it meant, but I didn't have the language to understand what it fully mean in application to who I am and my identity and my sexuality. I didn't have that back then. There was no internet. There was no books that speak to that. The books that did have was the encyclopedia. Like that's where you will find LGBT related
Yeah.
stuff. So it went on like that. It messed me up completely. So like for CXA, I failed all my exams. I passed like 3. I remember my English language teacher telling me that's how she said to me, she's like, I have been teaching the 5 business 1, which is the top class, 5 business 1 and 5 science class. You used to dump all the bright children into those classes. And she's like, I have been teaching that 5 business 1 for 20 years, and I have only had 1 student fail English at CXC level. And that was because the student had dropped out of Form 5 and never used to come to school and stuff. And, and then she's like, you're the only person, it's for my second student to fail English. And it was just because I was messed up. I was like, I remember going to my CXE that first year, the first time I wrote it, and I was literally at this point in my life where I couldn't retain information because school was a battleground for me. I had to, there was a time when we were rebuilding the school. And like most secondary schools, you put it comes in different buildings, right? So every 2 months they were remodeling and one of the buildings. So whoever was occupied in that building was basically out of class for like a month. And then they would like when it came to us, we were like in Form 2 or Form 3, I think it was. They had put us, when they were rebuilding our block, they had put us in the Form 4, Form 5 block, which was more to the back of the school. So that meant I had to walk through the corridors of where the older kids were. And I remember getting up early every single morning to go to school so that when I get to school, there would be nobody in school. So I wouldn't have to face that onslaught of attacks that I would face every single day walking through those halls and corridors. I remember in my Form 5 year, I used to wait until everybody leave the school before I could exit the gate and stand up and get a taxi to go home. Like, because I didn't want to have to stand up there in front with everybody and waiting for a taxi and pushing for a taxi to go home. Like, that's kind of shit that I had to go through, and I didn't have nobody. I'm surprised sometimes that I was able to survive all of that.
But where
Mm-hmm.
do, it might sound like an obvious question, but they learn that from their parents. How come we didn't learn? It doesn't sound so far like any of us learned to be prejudiced against anybody else, whether for sexuality or not.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like we came from different types of family backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
because I never thought of anybody else in a different. I just thought they were other kids like me. Um, I don't ever hear us talking about. Oh, well, then again, I think you made the point, or somebody made the point, that there are gay people who are closeted, of course, and they could pass, and they tend to get involved in bullying others.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe take the attention off of themselves. But I still find it very ironic that it's like we didn't learn those things, but people learned it, and then we became the victims of it. I don't know. What is that about?
I
It's a
don't know. I
phase
don't.
here.
Yeah, I don't know what it's about. And
We
I'm
were
a
just
I'm a generation before you all.
right.
I heard some of what you were saying, Kennedy, and You all may not know it, but I was a bit of a tomboy.
Shocking.
No way,
Yeah.
shocking. Oh my God.
Yeah, you know, but you know, you had to. I mean, it seems that, and as you said, Kennedy, people know about us before we even know about ourselves. And I came from a family that you had to be strong and express yourself. If not, you were invisible, especially if you were a woman. And I, of course, was female and still is. Uh, no, so I wanted to get my dad's attention. So when he was doing repairs on the car, I would be doing those things. I don't know if people and strangers thought by doing those things that I was one of those, because you're talking about the early 70s, right? I was born in 64, so I'd be 10 by 74. So in my young teens, it wasn't even 1980 yet, where HIV and AIDS hit this country and people were talking about the LGBTQ community, right? But some young person wrote on my wall that I was a lesbian or one of those. I did not even see the message. It's one of my uncles that took it off the wall before I got home from school. And in those days, school was St. Francois girls, so I was wearing a skirt, right? So and that I think was how I was bullied. I was also bullied um, while I was at Republic Bank. And even though I had a big expose on a Sunday Express and on the front page in Silhouette, I don't think anybody knew of me per se. I guess they knew I was different, but it was this guy who every morning and every evening while I'm walking on Brian Lara's promenade to get to my place of work would say things like, I know who you are and what you are, and I know what, and follow me across Brian Lara Promenade into my place of work saying all sorts of things.
Wow.
And as Kennedy said, there were no internet, there was nothing, and I didn't, while I was
Faye?
beginning my activism at the time, I would put out, yes?
Oh, sorry,
Hello?
we lost you for a brief moment. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah,
I heard her. She was there.
so his internet's giving trouble still.
Yeah.
So even though there were no outward signs, because at that point in time I wore makeup for a while, I had the earrings on, I had the blue high heel shoes from Ati Logo that you would have to wear to work the Republic Bank and stuff. I was presenting myself in a manner that was not too comfortable for me, but you just had to do it. So, I don't know how people pick up on it. I mean, even my mother picked up on me before I even picked up on me. And it caused a problem, right? So before I even had my first intimate and sexual relationship, my mother felt that this friendship that I had with somebody was more than it was.
God, they always knew.
Yes, they do, and I don't know how. But how do strangers pick up on it too? So, we talk about gaydar in our community. Hell, it's strong, if you really and truly deal with it and see it, yeah.
Faye, what? So you see, that is what I'm trying to get at. What is it that causes them to be so fixated on what is normal that they can? Is it because in their family everything is so homogenous that if something is different it immediately sticks out? Like what gives the other people the ability to know us before we know? Like Brandy talked about it as well. Others in different sessions have talked about it, that people kind of tell you what you are.
Well, the way society works and the way a society is set up, you have to be part of. If you are assumed to be just a bit different, to ruffle the feathers in any which way, form, or fashion, society reins you in. And what I mean by that, even as children, tiny children going to school, if you sit in a corner in kindergarten playing by yourself, somebody comes out and throw a toy at you because you're not supposed to be. I'm talking about children that small.
Yes,
Because
yes.
some reason, somehow, it's not supposed to be. Societies are set up that you have to be part of the herd. And the minute that you're not part of the herd is something frightening because you are this entity, this ball of energy that might upset the entire apple cart, as they would say. So they do things to rein you back in. I know when I went to secondary school that you couldn't be different. You couldn't be smarter. You couldn't be faster. You couldn't be stronger. There were always people who told you couldn't. Not even if you were LGBT, you just couldn't be. If you were the teacher's pet, believe me, you were getting bullying. If you stood out in any which form or fashion. And I'm asking myself, if that is the way that science has set us up to make us even more stronger, because we just need to be, you know, they say it's survival of the fittest. So if we're going to take those that stand outside and throw everything at them, and they develop the skills, the knowledge, whatever it is to surpass all of the negativity, then that is just what we need to do, and that is what we are, because we are needed for some reason for life. That's how I look at it. But I don't know what it is. I cannot explain
But it's interesting how they attach a gender role to the difference at the same time as identifying that you're different, if you know what I'm getting at. So
Of course, but
it's not just you're different, but is it different and you must be a lesbian or you must be a buller?
but this is how society is created. We look at all our laws. Everything is created to be in a specific manner, right? Um, and remember, women were chattel long before.
Right.
So men who are different would be treated less than, especially men who take on the female role. They were even less than female because you couldn't be part of whatever the system, the society had for you, because you did not fall in to any of those things. So you had to be even less than.
Well, Marcus spoke about that. I want to just take a pen on you at that point. Marcus spoke about that in the first year when we did Macho Panel, right? He spoke about the fact that gay men, in terms of how the homophobic straight man looks at people, the gay man is looked at, as you just said, as less than the woman. And it's so interesting how people have these tiers in their mind of how they place people in.
That's how history has had it. This is how all the systems are set up. In the days of the wars,
Right.
Greek or otherwise, the men took young boys as lovers while on the war path and not home with their families. And as soon as they got back home, they went back to their wives, right? They used the excuse of training the young boys to be men sometimes, and what to do sexually for their own thing. Everything was set up within the system to support the needs of men, and the more money you had, the more power they had, the more things you continue to put in place to support yourself, your desires, your rules, and whatsoever. And many of our systems somehow still hold on to a lot of that. I mean, if we look within the Bible, and I really hate to talk religion, which is why I couldn't be part of the faith panel at all, even in that so-called good book, a lot of the things that they use out of that good book was to keep those kind of power systems um, and and support the desires that men have, whether the desires for money or power or whatever. It's in there, and they use it very well.
You know, the homosexuality was not seen as a global problem until the church started to spread.
Of
I don't know if
course,
you're aware of that, right?
of
That's
course.
So that,
certainly
like, you
fake.
know, the pagan faiths and all other earlier religions did not ascribe a problem to you if you had sex with the
Right. And
same
it was
gender. As a matter of
legalized.
fact, it was some societies supported it because they found that it was, as like Faye was saying, helpful for men going to war to carry a concubine. And that's more or less where the role of concubine came in. It wasn't a role ascribed for women originally. Concubine were young men who had to play that role in society. And Faye is also right. We have ascribed ourselves this sort of functionality in society where we play these roles. Even before you're born, you know, we reinforce this division of the sexes with blue and pink. Um, Parents,
And
I
the
still,
divisions,
yeah, I
and the
still,
divisions of what you are supposed to be and what your responsibilities are, not just the
yes.
fellas. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, and I find it very disappointing that cable TVs they're now promoting these things called gender reveal parties where pregnant women have this big celebration, and then you know they have like a kit that pops open with color, and then it says what the gender of your child is going to be. So you're setting up this child with a lot of stress before the child is even born, because you
Agreed. As you say that, you ever realize that some of those parents, you find yourself wondering, well, if it were another gender, they would have been very disappointed. It's almost like they wanted that specific gender. I find that
gender.
so telling.
It is. I mean, it's also a failure in our society, and I'll give you a little history. I'm sure. I hope most of you know this, but before 1945, the color pink was actually masculine,
Yeah.
and the color blue was feminine. And then after World War II, when they freed the concentration camp prisoners, when they discovered the gay population who was in prison wearing the pink
Yes,
triangle,
yes.
the churches protested. They were not set free, actually. They were sent to regular prisons after because they were deemed sex offenders. And from thenceforth, pink became associated with women.
Yeah, that's true, because when it is you look at some of those old ads, those very early ads when they were marketing to specific genders, pink was usually marketed towards to males, and blue would have been for, or and it's a different color for
But
females. So,
imagine that bullshit. A color has a gender now. Like what? But
So,
but what do we do then as a society to move? Because we like in an echo chamber here, right? Tonight,
yeah.
especially because we're not live, we're just talking to each other. Um, what do we need to do? What do we need to push for society to do to really make a difference? Like, do we go all the way back to the basics then? Like, all the things we're talking about, like religion and stereotyping, and if we deal with the foundation, then logically it might remove the LGBTQ parts of it, the gender related issues. So is that what we have to do? Like,
well, that's the utopian
Well,
society that I think we're trying to create at some
yeah.
point. You know, that has always been the long-term vision and goal. To me, it's that argument that straight people make about which we have an agenda, and that we always force in our lifestyles on everybody. I think there's a justification for us to, well, first and foremost, we're not forcing any lifestyle, but we have to force some of our lifestyle onto the
no,
status
we
quo.
said we have an agenda.
We have to force some of our lifestyles onto the status quo to challenge some of those norms, because if it is we don't do that, then we will always be suffering in silence. So I need young gay kids, we need to share these stories. We need to identify, so that we can remove the narrative, oh, I'm being bullied because identifying or I'm not displaying traditional masculine behaviors and attitudes. What is traditional masculine behaviors and attitudes? You know, we need to redefine all of that. And the only way we can do that is by continuing to challenge that norm. And if some people want to perceive that as force in our lifestyles or onto them, I mean, that speaks more to you and your ignorance level as opposed to what's causing hurts and harm, and how do we eradicate and eliminate
So
those
what's
things?
the gap
Because
then?
that's what it is we should be focused
So-
on.
So one of the things that sorry Faye, one of the things that works effectively is that you need to create something called a propaganda engine. Now, propaganda is not a negative word,
No, it's not.
just so that people know. A propaganda engine is a tool that you use to quickly spread information that you want people to digest. So one of the things that you can do with a propaganda engine is to do myth busting. So the very same things that we're talking about now, that people have these foundations about where colors came from. That, for example, the foundation that they said, you know, a lot of people say that when they oppose gay marriage, they say that marriage is sanctified by God, which is not true. Marriage was actually it's a new age thing. The exchange of wedding bands was a Celtic pagan ritual, and the Catholic Church adopted it because the Celts would not give up the gold wedding bands on their left hand. Originally in history, if you look it up, marriage was indicated by wrapping a leaf on your right finger, the right second to last finger. It wasn't the left hand. But when the Celtics refused to change their tradition, the Catholic Church just absorbed the exchange of gold bands. So, you know, there are a lot of things, and even the Egyptians had their own version of marriage that included wearing gold. But if we can actually, you know, use this history and break these myths that they hold on to as their foundation for discriminating against us, once you weaken and find those Achilles heels, they have nothing to stand on. So then their argument becomes baseless. One, and two, the generations coming up now have information at their hands, so they will go for themselves to see if this is true. And once they start discovering this truth, then it becomes difficult for these haters to convince them that they need to do this, because the generation will not question you and say, but no, but you can't say that, that's not true. So we have a responsibility now to start projecting truth. You create a propaganda machine that works to burst myths and to propagate truth.
Yes, I was going to say not exactly those words, but say yes, we have to force our lifestyle down. And what I mean by that is, when the Europeans came and they so-called to all the nations, let's look at England, who had gone into Africa, gone into India, gone into everywhere, even in America, the natives of those places had a third gender.
Yes.
They had these outliers in their society. And what the victorious country did is wipe out anything of the anything of the former country that they were victorious on. So let's get rid of their governments, let's get rid of their people, let's get rid of everything and make them comply with everything that we want.
Yes.
And basically, nobody has said to them that they're wrong. Now they're saying they need reparations for all the damage that they've done. Even here in our country, our native Indians, when they try to claim their burial grounds under which our parliament is built, when they try to claim holy grounds, what did we do with them? And tell them no? When they want to strip now Columbus statue, and we telling them no still? It's about time that we really and truly, we have an agenda. Yes, let's force something on them. We're not forcing them to become us, which is what England and everywhere else has done. But we're forcing them to certainly accept the fact that we exist. And yes, we need to do all the myth busting, and we need to challenge people as much as possible on everything that we do. Do we risk losing everything when we do that? Yes. So it has to be a strategic way that we do it. And we can't ask everybody else who sees things somewhat like our way or who wants to have change to take up a hammer and go out there and smash everything. Because you know what happens? The same thing that happened to the folks that are saying the police brutality and everything else, you know, they've made things a little bit harder for them, but it has to be strategic, yes.
So then what is our role in that as?
I think we're doing what we need to do right now. Can we certainly do more? Sure, we can. But we could certainly do less too. You know, we're doing as much as we can within the time that we have. We want to see all the changes happen. Yes. But all the changes won't happen until everybody gets together. But as we plod along, even if we get laws tomorrow, we
Yes.
still have to change hearts and minds. And hearts and minds are the hardest to change when everything in our system says to the others whose minds we want to change that we are not good, that we are evil, that we are devil. Yes, Wade. You know, so we have to break the system. How do we break the system? Maybe people say you have to be on the inside to break the system down. That didn't happen.
I think the big challenge is to get straight people
Sorry,
in
I'm
particular.
getting distracted here.
Yeah, no, I think the big challenge is to get straight people to recognize us as human beings and our issues and our problems, because it's the same thing that Black people are talking about, you know, with this whole Black Lives Matter movement. You know, um, when that isn't your lived experience, it's hard for you to even relate or far less even acknowledge it. So a lot of what we are talking from our LGBTI experiences, straight people will, they don't know what that is because that's not who they are. And if that's not who they are, they're not making that conscious effort to step into our shoes to understand where we are coming from, because that's not their life, that's not their world. So when they turn on the television and they hear something about two men getting married or two women doing X, Y, and Z, it's like, what's that? That has never been at the epicenter of their life. So what the challenge is for us is to get straight people to see us as human beings and realize that, you know, we don't want anything different or unique or you know, out there, way out there that's different from you, and see us as two human beings. And that has always been the conflict, because I know a lot of straight people who are friends, and they will love me and support me, but you still hear them talk nonsense. And I'm like, I call one of my friends out for that nonsense. You know, she was on Instagram under her business profile. She has a small business, talking about how we try to always force our lifestyle onto people. And I'm like, if this was and she was talking about that article that Luke had shared where there was on the newspaper last week, some police officer was complaining about one of his, yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? So, and she was talking about that, and I'm like, how would you feel if this was something about race, this article, and I look to make that statement? These Black people are trying to change the rules and change the laws and blah blah. How would that make you feel? You know, it's like, you want to talk about your injustices and your challenges with inequality, but you have to be able, and the same thing applies to gay people, we have to be able to look at the other injustices and inequalities that other people are subjected to, so that we can always stay in that zone of, you know, being empowered and looking to challenge whatever status quo that keeps us in that oppressive state. You can't just stay in your one lane and expect change. You have to be able to reach out. And I don't think people do that at all. You know, they stay in their markers of identities and look at the oppression that they face, and that's all they know. But it's not that. It's not just about that.
You know, one of the things that works effectively in public communications is telling stories that make your readers feel happy. It's very, very important to highlight the ills and the negative things and what you're going through. But just before I left the UN, we conducted some research We hired a company to do some assessments of our outreach programs, and they looked at it, and what they did, they looked at human responses to these stories, and they focused specifically on COVID and the impact on people. And what they were saying is that people start to switch off when all they hear about a particular issue is negative.
Yes.
They get fed up, and then they say, yes, we know that you're suffering. And what happens is that because people who sympathize with us feel that they don't have the power to help us, they switch off, because it's a human defense system in the mind. If you cannot do something to help this individual, the mind, instead of your mind going into this endless cycle of what to do, it just switches off. And the mind does it without your conscious control. So you can call on the situation back, but your mind, to protect your own self, is going to switch you off. So what they suggested was that to continue carrying those dramatic stories, but in the midst of it, find a positive story to tell. Find something to make people feel happy about.
What is that
So,
positive, happy story?
so like the interview I did with the couple who got married, so what we have to start to do is showcase those little moments in our lives that we are happy about, those little things that make people start to identify with us. So not everyone will see it as positive, but those who want to support us and want to do good will see us actually see the possibility of what can happen. And then it's that sort of hope, that sort of possibility where
Let me,
you sell the imageries. Because now I suppose one of the juxtaposition to that would be like, well, if we sell that image, they can say we're good and we're happy where we are, like pig and mud, don't give them nothing else. But it's sort of how we marry these stories. There are challenges, we are suffering, but at the same point in time, we try to cope within what we have, sort of like a bird in a cage.
well, that is the key, what it is you just said there, because going back to what it is you were talking about previously, I liken it to, I want to call it the Cosby show back in the late 80s and stuff, right? So this was the first time white America got to see African American family that while they did not look like them visually because of the identities that they hold. He's a doctor, she's a lawyer, nuclear family, traditional family values. This was something that they held up. So white America fell in love with that. But all of the oppression and racism and discrimination that Black people are subjected to now also existed back then. So I feel like if it is you want to package just happy narratives to make white people feel comfortable, that's not real empathy that we are building up in them. It's almost like, you are saying to me, I can't handle all your stories, so just give me your happy-go-lucky story so I can feel comfortable. Great, so that I can agree and be your friend and wrap my arms around you. But my oppression that I am subjected to, the discrimination that I am walking every single day with, still stays with me. You are not supporting me when this thing comes to the forefront, when it's knocking at my door. You are not with me. You are just simply saying to me, put on your happy face. I accept you for your gay. I have no problems with it. Put on your happy face, because that's all I want to see. And at the extent I will allow that's the extent that I want my association to be with you on. It can't go beyond that. So when you're getting beat up, and you're getting raped, and you're getting, no, I don't have time for that. It can't work like that. If you really want to engender real, genuine empathy amongst the straight population, they have to take both sides. You can't pick and choose. You have to get the good with the bad, and the ugly as well.
Yeah, that's true, Kennedy, and that's exactly what I'm saying. So, because if we project only the negative, then, as I say, you
scare them away, you turn them away.
Scare them away, because then they get scared, because then they feel they can't help you. So there are very strategic ways to do that. So even if you show a happy story, let's say you show a group of people going to a party or outside of Parliament, stand up laughing and so, but then the narrative ends with them going back into the restrictive situation they are, so that you start the story with sort of, you know, coaxing people in. This looks happy and bubbly. But then when it ends up, when the story, if the narrative ends, it reflects back on the reality of what life is, so that people get a sense of, while you want to be happy, you still live in this hopelessness. And that's how we have to sit and strategize in narratives. And one of the ways to do that is through storytelling. Some of us who have lived our lives can do that through storytelling. You know, we make fun sometimes of the difficulties that we've had in our lives because that's our culture. And telling these stories to the younger generation helps them to identify with us, you know. So what will happen is that it's entertaining. So, like, you know, I can give the story of me and my 3 friends walking down Shaguana's main road, and then, you know, and then just because we know people were going to call us Bull on the street corner, just before we reached there, we outed ourselves. Margot and Bruce would be walking, and then I would be walking behind them, and then Margot would say, Bruce would say to Margot very loud, "Margot, where the woman?" And she sprang and said, "Look, she there," and point to me. By the time we got to the busy corner, so nobody had anything else to say again, because we exposed ourselves essentially, right? So that there was no way to say, "Look, the bullets." But it was quite funny for us. And, you know, the way it was done, sometimes when we tell the stories, it puts a human face to what's happening. And storytelling helps people to hear that you are a person, that you're not just an advocate, that you're not just this angry person who wants to destroy the world if you don't get your rights. And then it helps them to identify, because people might connect with things, and they might, when they reflect on the story, it's entertaining initially, but when they sit down and then they start thinking about it, then they say, well, you know, this is a real problem, although it was funny, it's something that actually happens. And there's a
But
good example.
you also have to empower them, that
Yes.
by letting them know exactly what they can do, how they can create that change within their own circles, because
Yeah.
because you've gotten them to the point of empathy, they understand it now. But now it's instead of them just going home and be like, okay, I got it. Now we need action. We need for you
Correct.
to take action. So you have to give them bullet points as to how they can do that.
Film myself slitting my wrists and put that out onto YouTube and say, well, if you bully children, that's what's going to happen.
Because that would be entertaining to a lot of people.
I know some NGOs who would wish that it was Rudy.
Even if it wasn't Rudy,
Yeah,
my
exactly.
it was great that an LGBT person takes their life. There's one less of us. No,
I mean, I just go ahead, Faye. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, thanks.
You haven't
So
said much.
I know. I like what Wade said, because it goes back to me thinking, and I credit Kennedy for this. It goes back to occupying public spaces. So in the aspect of storytelling, if people actually see that queer people are just regular people at the end of the day, because I remember when we were planning, I put it on my activist cap for a minute, when we were planning the Eager for Easter event the first year, we got a sense of what we were trying to do, but it was actually Kennedy who opened up my eyes. And I mean, I could talk about Kennedy from here to the kingdom come, but he really and truly has shaped a lot of how I see activism. It was about occupying a public space with families, just showing we are friends and we all just want to participate in this activity together. And how we marry that with empowering people to advocate for this change, because I firmly believe that allies are one of our biggest resources. And I mean, Rudy says it every year as well. How we empower them is we carry them to these spaces and we show them, hey, they might be accepting of you as a person because they might be your friend, your brother, your sister, anybody else. But when you put them around a gathering, to them it might seem, oh, I'm going to be confronted with this thing that I'm uncomfortable with. And there is the truth, and in fact, that's what's going to happen. But it goes back to showing that these are actual stories that need to be told. And I liked Rudy's point as well in terms of dismantling some of the fundamental things that were meant to discriminate us. Because Wade said it at the beginning of the conversation too. The church at least for me, the church has been one of the biggest discriminatory bodies across the board for all queer people. And I mean, I know y'all had a faith chat that I was really excited to participate in, but with. And one of the questions I had was, how is it that the church is going to reconcile all of the hurt and the pain and the anger that they have meted out to us as queer people? Because I've grown up in faith and I've grown up in religion, and it's always been a place that's supposed to be safe and judgment free. But on the other hand, it's the complete opposite, where you're told you're going to hell, and you're told you're this wrong person, and all, and God is going to shun you and smite you, and you're going to die, and all the dramas, whatever, whatever. So I feel like it has to be a great cyclical kind of undoing of all of that patriarchy and hate and discrimination and anger, because if it is that if we tackle those things, because again, those things to me are some of the fundamental tenets of discrimination, because they always purport marriage is between a man and a woman, and two men lying together. They quote that Leviticus scripture, from here till the kingdom come. And while it may ring true for them, is it true for everybody? Because I feel like the Bible in itself, the good book as we call it, it was written by mankind. And I feel like access to a higher power is not so much shaped by that good book. But anyway, that's very off the course. That was part of the discussion. But it goes back to the occupying of public spaces and carrying the people who may be on the cusp of acceptance to really and truly show them that this is what it's actually like. It's not all of these stereotypes. We're not all going to be bullying on the place.
It's not the
We're not all
orgies.
going to be, yeah, it's not, I mean, for some people it may be, but for for others it may not be, because we have been fighting collectively for rights, for basic things for many years. And that's my contribution.
I like the point. Sorry if I don't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to say quickly. I like the point you bring up about religion. It's time faith leaders need to start reconciling what they centuries of perpetuating, the hurts and harm that they have perpetuated based on what they have been teaching. And I feel like, and this is kind of a controversial point, but because I feel like we LGBT people have done somewhat of an injustice to ourselves when it comes to, and I'm speaking strictly from an evangelical, but my faith, when it comes to us removing ourselves from the church. Now, I know some of them would say that they have been kicked off by their pastors and their church and stuff, but I was never really kicked out, but I just left, because the church wasn't preaching something that spoke to me. But I feel like, I always walk around telling everybody that I still have faith. I pray, I get down on my knees every day. I pray to God, and whatnot. I feel like I'm doing myself a disservice by not. Yes, I do. Okay, I'm going to heaven, unlike you. I feel like I am doing myself a disservice because I'm not making my presence and claiming my rightful space in that house of God. To show these religious people, you know what, you can go on your pulpits and you can quote all your biblical scriptures, you want about homosexuality, this, that, and that. That is not going to stop me from coming here and worshiping the God that I know loves, that created me and loves me and will forgive me for as long as I show remorse and whatnot.
But then why you have to go in that church to see?
Well, that's what I say. It's a controversial point, but I feel like, some of us we claim the church rejects us, but we are not claiming back our rightful space within our religion. We may not have to go to that church, but we have turned our back so much from our faith, the ones who are religious or spiritual, whatever you may be, that we just ignore it completely, and we are not rightfully claiming it back to say,
so would you support us starting an ecumenical space for LGBTQI people?
Well, yeah, I mean, I spoke to you the other day when we had that faith thing, and I'm thinking next year, I mean, we are known, we have grown up seeing all of these big tents and these savannas and stuff where they're having church services. That's what church services, faith groups do, right? Next year for Pride, let's get those same faith leaders and put up a tent and, and have a nice big Sunday service or something, and have it specifically for LGBT people and our allies. I think we have to show the religious bodies and their supporters that you all may say X, Y, and Z about us, but guess what? We still believe in God. God created us in his own vision, whatever, and we are going to we are going to be his followers. We are part of his flock. You know, we will serve and you know, be there. You know, uh, because I know that's going to be a tough point to get across to people because of the church's centuries long stance on this issue. But if I had the opportunity to go back to my church and just claim space, and I would go. I would go. I don't care. But my church is a little bit different because the pastor's son is gay, and I know it's like nobody really talks about it. But so it's a little bit easier. But the pastor likes me and stuff. He's always inviting me back and stuff. But I no, but yeah, I hope you all get what I'm trying to say. We can't say the church leaders hate us, and therefore we are opposite fan. It's just because it's kind of like we are reinforcing what they're saying. They are saying we committing sin. Are we committing sin? I don't see what I do on my identity and how I practice, how I love to be sinful. So I don't care what you are preaching. As Bill said, the book was written by a man. You don't know if that's true or not. You know, we don't know how many verses or chapters.
I don't know if a woman wrote it or anybody in between.
Exactly. So, I don't know.
I liken the argument back to, and I know we're straying from the initial topic, but I like the conversation. For me, it goes back to the argument of young people straying away from the church as well. I feel like because queer people are already so discriminated against and stigmatized in whatever way, form, or fashion, we oftentimes feel a sense of judgment from this body, regardless of the faith that you ascribe to. We feel a sense of judgment from this body. Similarly to young people, and as a young person myself, I mean, I turned 21 in a couple of months, in a couple of weeks actually, but whatever. As young people, we don't like to feel judged, period. You don't like to feel judged. But there's a sense of empowerment and emboldenedness that young people have these days where they're not standing for judgment and they're not standing for discrimination and anything. So to even occupy that public space where you feel discriminated against because of the things that are thrown at you from the pulpit. And I mean, like it takes me back to my secondary school because I went to a denominational school. We say at a Seventh-day Adventist school, but hearing every day pretty much that gay people are wrong and you're going to hell and your parents will never accept you and all of those things would have shaped a lot of the narrative going forward. So if it is that there was to be an ecumenical center set up for LGBT plus youth or people in general, I mean, those are things that I think as a community, we would welcome because it takes away the aspect of judgment and it might frame some sort of reparations for the centuries of hurt and pain that the regular church would have caused.
Okay,
Kennedy, I'm diametrically opposed to a number of things that the church is preaching, not just homophobia.
100%.
The church have a very skewed position on the role of women, which upsets me greatly. Churches continue to diminish women, and that's even before I challenged what my church was saying about my own sexuality when I was trying to still fit into the corners there. I would find myself, sucking my teeth out loud in the service when I hear them saying disparaging thing about women, so if to say that, occupy as a sense of challenging your space in the church, if it was the only thing, but quite frankly,
how do we change it if we're sitting on the outside and we excuse ourselves from the inside?
Empty pews. Churches depend on pews for money to keep them going. Empty pews are a signal to the church that you're doing shit. Because I'll tell you something, the majority of the leaders of the church are still men who are fixed in their old masochistic ways. And they use God and they say that they are prophets of God and God gives them the power, and they look up to the sky and say God called on the power on them, and then they can do whatever they want because they're the voice of God. And until they do not recognize that the congregation is important and that there are actual women there in the congregation who are equal to them and not tools for them to be used and to make children for them, that has to change. Otherwise, I think, start a new ecumenical something and then let them sit and preach to the empty pews and see what will happen. The pews don't grow people.
Well,
So,
I like that idea of starting a new set of religious interpretations, and you partner with the right people, and people might be attracted to that and
And take
start.
their flock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, it's happening
Yeah.
already. It's happening from
Mhm.
inside the churches already. Those within the church, there are priests, there are people who's been studying theology and so forth, who's challenging the church's stance on LGBTQIA matters. And they're doing it from even within the Mormon church, where you would think the Mormon church were very much against it and might be the biggest one because they have created the what you call that, the conversion therapy and so forth. It came out of there. It's being challenged in there and highly challenged too. But I want to take the conversation back and I'll come forward. At the point in time I wanted to jump in and then Wade and everybody else. You talked about how you talked about people not accepting LGBT people because they're afraid of it, they don't know about it, they misunderstand it. But think about how hard it is for just strangers to do that if the families themselves, the parents who have born these children, who raise these children, can't even accept them, are so afraid, are not even looking to say, okay, I know this person, I know the type of person they are, I know their attitude, I know what they stand for, their morals and principles, because I've taught them that, can't accept them. See how hard it is for a stranger to do that.
Mhm.
Wade talked about stories. Yes, the stories will work. We could create the stories, not create. We can record the stories and put them out there, but still means how are we going to get the people there to read these stories, to access these stories? Somebody said to me a long time ago, I don't to say that I am part of the LGBTQ community or even come out. Guess why? Because I'm out. I do as I please. Who I love. And it's if anybody see it and they want to call me out or they want to do anything, that's their business. I will do what I'm doing because I'm going to be like everybody else. A heterosexual person doesn't need to come out. I just need to live my life authentically and let people judge it on that. Because you know what? Right now, people judging you whether or not you're LGBTQ. They're judging you on your weight. You're judging you on your hair, whether it's thin, whether you have, you're fat, you're slim. You know what? People will just find something about you that they dislike. If you threaten anything about them or in them, or you trigger anything in them, so they'll find something to come with you at. And as far as the church goes, sure, we can start our own. That's fine. Um, and but a lot of people have to recognize faith is is within you. It's not just about the church, and it isn't just about whether it's Catholic or whatever. And if you look at all the religions, they have similarities. You know, what they think about light and fire and how it is, where they think souls go and so forth. They all share some commonalities, right? But again, the church is not just a good book, or it's not just the people on the pulpit, because what they've thrown in with their teachings is their personal feelings, driven by whatever it might be, driven by internal phobia, homophobia, that is. It could be driven by hate because somebody did them something else, whatever the case may be. It's never really pure. And we just get the interpretation of somebody's view of whatever book, whether it be the Bible, the Testament, the Quran, the whatever it is that they're interpreting, we get their view of it. And like communication, it's all twisted because of our experiences. So as they would say, you know, there's his truth, there's her truth, and then the truth is somewhere in the middle. It's somewhere there. So yes, it will help. Um, but we still have to find a way to reach people if we are going to change anything. And it's about doing it from all different angles, which is why I always say there's so much work to be done that we need any and everybody to do the bit of work from whichever angle they're doing it at, because one thing will not work. It has to be many ways, because we are so diversified. People are so diversified. I mean, we ourselves within the community do not understand or accept each other, and we judge each other on whether we are monogamous or non-monogamous, whether we wish to go to sex parties or don't go to sex parties. Femme presenting women might have a problem with male presenting women, and we have so many issues within our own community. Could you imagine how many issues those outside who do not understand what we are going through have with us? So I've gone back and I've come forward.
So guys,
Yeah.
on that note, before we close off, because it's getting close to 11, what would you think could be an activity that PrideTT undertakes to have some strong positive impact in changing all these things so that we reduce bullying? Because that's what we're really here to talk about. So what, from all the conversation, what would be one major activity you would like to see PrideTT undertake that would have an impact on reducing bullying?
To continue what we are doing, what we have been doing during this Pride Month. COVID has shown us another way of doing things. Yes, we have to get together, meet face to face, derive the energy from each other to go on. But you see, these things, creating these recordings and putting out these videos, having these meetings, challenging the talk even within ourselves, this is what has to happen and continue. It's a way that somebody can reach out anonymously and view. The conversations are not just coming from our side, but it has come from a lot of others. It has come from people who are known and not so well known. So the fact that they can reach a lot more is happening. The conversations has to come. We have to keep getting each other to try to take that step out of this box that we've put ourselves within, and step out and take that little that step to something more and to grow. And I think more of these is what has to happen. And this has shown us what we have done in the last 2 weeks and what we're doing here this week, that this is definitely a medium that we can use to reach a lot of people. They do it on their own time, they do it when they're ready. We just need to put it out there. We haven't been putting it out there. Nobody has. The NGOs before hasn't done it. PrideTT has done a lot more of it than anybody else. And we take a topic every month after this and we dissect it and then put it out there for everybody else to continue to view it.
I love that idea.
Yeah, I think we can get different people to take up specific areas, as you say, Faye, and have many things, because some people will not tune in to talk about religion, but they'll tune in to talk about poetry, they might tune in to talk about sports. And if there are people who are interested in those areas, we could just give them our platform and say, well, use it.
Yep.
Really remember I had brought up the
YouTube,
the underuse of our YouTube channel. Pride. We should actually have a brand called Pride TV, and maybe work on creating some sort of studio environment so we can even build viewership like that. So it's not just people still tune into the live chat, but you create an environment where you have a couple of hosts. So we build
Like a
on the
red table
attractiveness of it.
Yeah. Last
Like a red table talk.
actually, last
bring it to a table talk.
No, but last
But
year we spoke to people like,
talk shows, we need to do it like a talk show,
Yeah,
essentially.
like a red table talk. It could be like a
Yeah.
as rainbow table talk, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
last year we spoke to people like Zoe and others to
Mhm.
help us because they have training in those areas. I think we need to bring that subcommittee together and get that done. But what it means is that we have to have that conversation as we keep talking about in the next week and a half after Pride, and really get down and continue to do our work. There's a lot of work to be done, and there's no shortage of you know of needs.
Yeah. I mean, for the rest of the year too as well, don't forget that, Brandy is there. She has amazing stories. Some of her girls are willing to tell stories, but we just have to, you know, get them to come out. So Tina is a lovely person. And one of the things I want to remind us, all of us, to be very mindful of when we do things, we always looking for somebody with titles and like who can save this world.
Oh God,
They're regular members of our community,
I
people
fed up
who
of all
may
the
not be
doctors and
academically inclined. Yeah,
masters
and
people and this one
those
tree.
people have beautiful stories, and they, if given the opportunity,
Yeah.
we did a stakeholder outreach, and Tina is such an amazing person. She herself has her own opinions, and she told us she was so happy that we gave her a chance to be heard when we had that stakeholder meeting with them during to talk about how they felt about COVID. And she said that when she was younger, there used to be things like that, and that we moved on and forgot them.
Say that again.
She said that we moved on and we forgot them because everything became, us engaging with everybody who was well written and did research and who has a doctorate and, who's recognized, and we forgot the small people behind.
No, that is true. I have heard that word from people who have been interviewed or surveyed by people who are doing, research papers and all kinds of things. And the people never come back to do anything with the same people who gave them the data to get ahead in life. And that is
There's a
so
lot of
wrong.
there's a lot of survey exhaustion within our
Yeah.
community and in the wider society. Because I've heard this as well. A lot of people are saying, "Gosh, didn't this group came and asked me the same question 6 months ago and a year ago?" And it's like, how many times do I have to keep giving the same story, and my situation remains the same even after I give you the information?
Although it would seem
So
that we don't have that problem at PrideTT because we've now reached over 150.
It is the fact that nobody is sharing the information that they have.
mhm,
They're not even putting the information out there. A lot of the surveys that have been done, yes, by UE students doing a master's or doing something, and they can't actually publish as yet.
mhm.
Or if it published, it's only getting certain places. But for instance, AJD and Kaiso and Friends for Life, who has done surveys within the last, but haven't yet released their findings.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So yeah, they're tired because they're not seeing anything from it,
Yeah.
and I can't blame them. I know that people say no. Because I have worked on some of these surveys myself a couple times. Um, it is very difficult to reach different people, and sometimes you want to get different people, so you end up asking the same individuals over and over
Over and over.
because it's our network is still a bit underground and it's very hard to reach them, so you
To
end
reach
up
them, yeah.
only targeting again the same avenues that you had. And then it's the other side of the coin. If I don't see somebody similar to me represented coming to ask me something, I'm not getting involved, kind of thing. Because I'm not seeing any part of me being reflected back. So I would say this is not for me. So, because I asked, and I'm using it for instance, I asked Brandy, I said I wanted a trans person on the panel. And Brandy had been on a couple of the panels, but she couldn't find anybody else that didn't want to do it.
Mhm.
So it's not just about, she couldn't find anybody 50 plus who wanted to do it. And then um, I said, well, okay, well, let's change it. I'm looking for, somebody else. And she suggested Esther. And I said, but Esther has been on a couple panels and let's do somebody different. And we couldn't find, or she couldn't find someone. So sometimes it's both ways and we don't know how to breach that barrier that's in the center there. Wade, you were going to say something, honey?
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah, so we're underground and the communication is blocked sometimes. We can't reach any and everybody. We just have to keep trying as best as we can. We've made mistakes. Others have made mistakes. We'll probably make some more, but we're also making good traction.
That's why visibility is so important, which is why it is what we do is going to create that. Okay, so Brandy and came and did what she did this year. Next year, you're going to see other trans people who are going to look at her and be like, oh, you did that, nothing happened, so I want to do it. So that's why it is, I think we need to continue and keep maximizing our visibility efforts. You want to have some events that will cater to people who live on the shadows, so to speak, but continue the visibility work that we are doing. Because
That's why my hair is the color it is, Kennedy.
Well,
Visibility.
Is it still blue tonight? With the nail
Yes.
polish?
And I still have my nail polish, yes.
mm-hmm.
So
we're doing good job. We're doing good work. But
came out of tonight then. So we reinforce the notion of the media space. We reinforce the notion of maintaining a lot of these types of discussions, and we reinforce the nature of visibility. And actually, in the last 2 days, I've been talking to people like about the motorcade and stuff, and a number of people are interested in it. They think it's a great idea, and they want us to have events as soon as COVID is lifted. They keep saying we were looking forward to some of the events that you all have every year, and we know you all weren't able to have it, but please have them as soon as you can. So I think that there'll be opportunities for us. Like COVID has created a desire, like a desperate need for people to get out and do things and have content, and we should take advantage of that.
It has always been, a need has always been there. And I think you all feel it too when you get into spaces with other gay people. It's a special place. It doesn't matter where it is. If it's on the beach in Toko, in Silibia, where you will, or if it's at studio or wherever, there is that need that's missing for our lives, that acceptance, that safe space, that only flows when you're around gay people. So it's not just COVID. It's just something that needs to happen. The need is always there.
All right, folks. Well, it's 10 to 11. We had a nice little tete-a-tete. Sorry, Ronnie didn't make it eventually. But these things happen. We've been having more or less seamless activities, so one has to go awry sometimes. But we had a good conversation, I think, and it is recorded for us. It didn't go live tonight, but we have it there.
Carolyn still haven't gotten back to me, so I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Okay. Oh, the owner of the bar asked what you all wanted for the motorcade when you arrived. So he's confirmed the parking spaces and so.
Okay.
And he was just kind of curious about what you wanted to do, if you all wanted to have entertainment and that sort of thing.
Singing for us.
Huh?
Wait, what time does that bar close? Does it go to 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock?
10 p.m. He has a restaurant license, so he operates as a restaurant.
Okay.
So it's 10 p.m.
Mhm.
So
So we have to change it to 9 or something. Because we had put it till 8.
yeah, they put it to 9:30 or something. He's there. He told me he had over the weekend he had 150 people inside of his bar. The police came, they did a check, and everything was fine.